Kate Reynolds had never liked old hospitals. Their stale corridors and lingering antiseptic smells unsettled her in ways she couldn't rationalize. Yet here she stood, in the creaking foyer of Blackwood Asylum, an abandoned mental hospital tucked into a remote corner of Pennsylvania. The chipped stone walls and boarded windows loomed in the twilight, ominous. Decades of dust and decay had settled over everything, giving the building a mournful hush. Officially closed in the late 1970s, Blackwood had always been the subject of rumors patients kept in inhumane conditions, doctors who pushed boundaries, an entire wing shuttered following scandal. As a freelance journalist hungry for a big break, Kate couldn't resist the site's macabre history. An anonymous tipster had contacted her with cryptic clues suggesting a secret sub-basement that never appeared on official records. They buried it, the voice on the phone had said. What they did down there, they wanted no one to know. Now, Kate's heart thudded with both excitement and trepidation. She set up her camera, scanning the lobby. Peeling wallpaper, shattered glass underfoot, graffiti across the front desk. Fragments of old paperwork littered the floor like fallen leaves. A battered wheelchair lay on its side near a toppled gurney. The wind moaned through cracked windows, stirring loose debris into ghostly swirls. "Let's see if that sub-basement is real," Kate muttered, mustering her courage. She clasped her flashlight tighter. Beyond the silent corridors and locked wards, somewhere down in the depths, a hidden hatch waited to be found. Over the preceding week, Kate had scoured local archives and combed through dusty records about Blackwood Asylum. She found references to expansions, to improved therapy facilities, and to clandestine treatment centers. But official floor plans only showed a single basement level, no second basement, no deeper catacombs. Yet hidden in the caretaker's log from 1962, she'd spotted mentions of sub-level 2 materials delivered, strange equipment, dozens of wheelchairs. She'd even found a partial blueprint tucked in an old building permit file, stamped with the asylum's seal but never officially recognized. The diagram was incomplete, just a few lines labeled SB subfloor, scrawled in a margin, enough to confirm that someone had drawn up a deeper structure. The archivist who assisted Kate had frowned. This building changed hands so often. The state seldom did thorough inspections. It's not impossible a deeper floor was built and never documented. That same archivist recalled hearing wild rumors from older townspeople about patients transferred in secret, about screams echoing from underground. Nothing proven, of course, she'd said. Kate had felt a chill then. Now, inside Blackwood, the reality felt far more tangible. The official basement was easy to find, a short flight of steps behind the main staircase, leading to musty storerooms. But somewhere deeper, the sub-basement beckoned, a hidden place scrawled only in old notes and half-burned logs. Moving cautiously, Kate passed the decaying reception hall, stepping around a pile of toppled filing cabinets. She found the wide wooden staircase leading down to the known basement. The overhead light fixtures had long since died, so she relied on her flashlight's narrow beam. Each step groaned under her weight. The scent of mold intensified. At the bottom, a corridor stretched in both directions. Rusty metal doors, each with a small window, lined the walls. One door labeled morgue hung ajar, revealing a clutter of old tables and collapsed shelves. Another, marked storage, was locked. Further down, signage indicated boiler room. She took it all in methodically, filming a few segments for her article. She wanted to capture the creeping sense of dread that pervaded this place. Kate paused at a large battered sign. "Basement authorized personnel only. This level includes maintenance, morgue, laundry, storage. No mention of anything deeper." She carefully tested each door, rummaging inside for hidden hatches. Time slipped by. The air felt stale, pressing on her lungs. Her flashlight revealed rotting crates, peeling paint, and ominous shadows. But no sub-basement entrance. Eventually she reached the far end of the corridor, faced with a locked door that read, "Equipment Room." The doorknob was jammed. With a few well-placed shoves, Kate managed to break it open, heart pounding from the effort. Inside, battered shelves held old medical supplies, metal trays, chipped glass bottles, disused EKG machines. Cobwebs draped everything, and mice had nested in a corner. In the gloom, Kate spotted a large metal desk covered in dusty paperwork. She brushed off debris, shining her light over the documents. Discharge forms, sedation logs, nothing referencing a second basement. Then she noticed a rolled-up set of papers behind the desk, tied with twine. She tugged them free. Blueprints, the same style as the incomplete plan from the archive. Unrolling them gingerly, she discovered a layout of the building's basement. Her pulse quickened. Yes, here was the official basement level, and faintly sketched beneath it, in narrower lines, a second layer, a sub-basement, room B2. No label for it. No official usage, just a blank space. A short note scrawled in pencil read, "Access via hatch boiler side. Keep locked." Kate's heart hammered. At last, proof. She left the equipment room, blueprint in hand, carefully closing the door behind her. The corridor felt darker, as if the building itself sensed her discovery. She navigated back until she found the boiler room. The door here hung loosely, an iron wheel affixed to it like a submarine's hatch. Kate wrinkled her nose at the stale, oily smell inside. Stepping in, she saw a massive furnace, silent for decades, covered in dust. Pipes snaked overhead, forming a labyrinth. Flaking lead paint gave the metal an eerie, scabbed texture. She swept her flashlight across the concrete floor, scanning for an opening. At first, she saw only scattered debris-broken tools, old rags. Then, near the back wall, she spotted a square seam in the floor. A heavy, rusted metal plate lay flush with the concrete, its edges sealed by old grime. Her breath caught. This had to be the hatch. She knelt, running a hand over the corroded metal. No handle was visible, just a faint hinge line. The blueprint's note echoed in her mind. Access via hatch keep locked. Indeed, 2 padlock loops were attached, but the locks themselves had rusted off or been removed. Using a small crowbar from her satchel, she'd brought it on a hunch. She pried at the hatch's edge. The metal groaned, flaking rust. With effort, the hatch creaked open an inch, letting stale air exhale into the room. The stench hit her, a pungent odor of rot and something else she couldn't identify. She grimaced, shining her light into the darkness below. A narrow ladder led downward, vanishing into gloom. Kate's mouth went dry. She inhaled, bracing herself. Then, gripping the ladder, she descended. The ladder rungs were cold and slick with condensation. The sub-basement lay at least 10 feet below the official basement. As Kate's boots touched the floor, her flashlight beam wavered across a cramped corridor of rough concrete. She heard water dripping somewhere. The air was thick, almost suffocating. She advanced slowly, the blueprint rolled under her arm. The corridor led to a single iron door. No window, just a handle. She gave it a tentative push locked. Her heart sank. But noticing the corroded hinges, she jammed the crowbar between the door and frame, prying with all her might. The screech of bending metal echoed ominously. Then, with a final wrench, the door gave way. She stepped into a larger room, and the smell worsened, an unidentifiable musk of old leather, damp mold, and stale air. Kate's flashlight swept across a sight that made her stomach tighten. Rows of wheelchairs. They were arranged in neat lines, each facing forward, arms of the chairs pointing outward. Faint straps dangled from some, undone. The metal frames were tarnished and caked with grime. Something about their arrangement felt expectant, like a silent audience. The floor was cracked concrete, stained with dark splotches. The walls had chipped paint, revealing older layers, and near the corners she saw deep scratch marks, as if someone had clawed at the concrete in desperation. Shallow grooves trailed across the walls in frantic, erratic patterns. A chill coursed through Kate. This place wasn't on any record for a reason. Whatever happened here was never meant to see the light of day. She ventured deeper, heart thudding. Her camera captured everything, the wheelchairs, the scratched walls, the silence that felt almost alive. Her mind raced with questions. Were these chairs for patients? Why the hidden room? The undone strap suggested patients might have struggled to free themselves, or staff had undone them in a hurry. But why? She crouched beside one chair, noticing old buckles caked in what might be dried blood. Lifting the strap, she found jagged edges as if forcibly torn. Nausea stirred. If patients were brought here secretly, what had been done to them? A faint scuttling noise broke the quiet. Maybe a rat. The overhead ceiling was low. The single light fixture shattered. Her flashlight illuminated more scratch marks near the far wall. She approached, heart in her throat, reading the partial scrawl of words etched into the paint. Help was visible, followed by lines that might have been letters, now obscured. Another door loomed at the back of the room, slightly ajar. She poked her head through. A smaller chamber stacked with boxes of medical supplies, old bandages, unlabeled brown bottles, rusted scalpels. On a dusty table lay a ledger. Kate flipped it open carefully. Patient number 1139, sedation applied. Patient number 1140, strapped in, no sedation, exhibit stress response. Page after page of cryptic notes. Many lines were crossed out. She turned to the final page. All patients relocated to subfloor, wheelchairs in place, condition unstable, need more sedation. Her skin crawled. Another line read, "We can't keep them quiet, trying to move them, but the basement is locked." Then the entry ended abruptly in a scrawl. Kate swallowed, stepping back into the main wheelchair room. A hush weighed on her. She realized she was unconsciously holding her breath, as if afraid to make noise. The feeble glow of her flashlight flickered, forcing her to tap its casing. The gloom pressed closer. She moved among the wheelchairs, filming each row. The straps, undone in every chair, suggested a moment of collective release, or an evacuation. A line of metal arms and footrests glinted in the beam. She was near the center of the room when she heard a soft sound, a slow, drawn-out exhale, barely audible. She froze, her pulse hammering. Her rational mind insisted it could be air escaping a cracked pipe, but it sounded disturbingly like human breathing. Carefully, she swung the flashlight around. Nothing. The wheelchairs sat inert. The scratch-marked walls remained still, yet the sense of being watched intensified, the hair on her arms prickling. She resumed scanning the area, her breath shaky. Then came another sound like a faint intake of breath, followed by a long exhale. Her chest tightened. She spun, half expecting to see someone. But the room was empty, or was it? Kate steadied herself. "I'm letting the darkness get to me," she whispered, though her voice trembled. She forced a few more camera shots, determined to document everything. This story would be explosive. A hidden sub-basement, horrifying evidence of unethical treatment. She had to gather proof, no matter how frightened she felt. She decided to check her phone for a signal, though she doubted it. As expected, 0 bars. The battery icon glowed half full. She took a few pictures with the phone camera anyway, capturing the lines of wheelchairs in stark black and white flash. Just then, a subtle scraping sound echoed behind her, like metal against concrete. She whirled around. The row of wheelchairs behind her looked exactly the same, pointed forward. Or did they? Her heart thudded. She could have sworn the wheelchair nearest the door was angled differently now, as if turned slightly in her direction. She took a step closer, shining the flashlight. The chair appeared the same. She shook her head. The darkness was playing tricks. She walked deeper into the room to examine the far wall. The scratch marks grew more intense here, gouges clawed in a frenzy. Some were arranged in patterns, maybe words long lost. She filmed them, whispering her commentary about the possible horrors inflicted on patients. A sudden wave of cold air swept past, making her teeth chatter. She heard another soft exhale, closer this time. She turned around, shining the flashlight. Her beam caught the row of wheelchairs. She gasped. Every single wheelchair had pivoted in her direction, as if a silent audience had turned to watch. For a half-beat, Kate froze in disbelief. She was sure they'd been arranged in forward-facing rows. Now each seat pointed at her, straps dangling. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words emerged. The flashlight trembled in her grip. A paralyzing fear overtook her. Could it be a breeze? A mass shift on the uneven floor? She took a shaky step forward. The chairs didn't move. The air felt electrified, as though an unseen presence hovered near them. Then came the breathing again. Low, labored inhalations scattered about the room. It sounded as though multiple invisible figures sat in those wheelchairs, exhaling in unison. The atmosphere thickened with dread. Kate's eyes darted between chairs, expecting to see someone materialize, yet the chairs sat empty. Or not empty. The overhead gloom seemed to swirl around them, forming half-glimpsed silhouettes that vanished the moment she tried to focus. She felt her mind teetering on the edge of panic. She forced herself to step backward toward the corridor she came from. She needed to escape. This was beyond any rational explanation. Journalistic curiosity or not, she had to get out. Each step felt heavier, as though the floor clung to her feet. She angled her flashlight away for just a second to check the door's location. In that instant, she heard a distinct clink like a wheelchair's footrest tapping the concrete. She whipped the light back, and in a flash of horrifying clarity, saw the wheels on the nearest chair turn just a fraction, as though reacting to her presence. Kate let out a stifled scream, stumbling backward. The next moment the chair was still, the wheels motionless, but the sense of movement lingered in her vision, like an afterimage. Her mind reeled. The room echoed with ghostly breathing, an unholy choir of patients who should not be there. She backed away faster, heading for the door. But each row of chairs was angled to face her now, their undone straps swaying lightly. Cold sweat dripped down her neck. She prayed the corridor door was still open. She didn't dare break eye contact with the chairs, half certain they might pounce if she looked away. At last she reached the threshold. With trembling hands, she yanked the door open only to find the corridor beyond, cloaked in pitch black. Her flashlight flickered, threatening to die. She forced it to remain steady, stepping out of the sinister wheelchair room. The breathing behind her seemed to intensify, as though 100 ragged lungs exhaled at once. Without warning, a deafening crash echoed from inside. She spun around just in time to see a wheelchair topple over as though thrown. It clattered violently, sending a burst of dust into the air. Another wheelchair followed, smashing into the first with a metallic clang. The entire row seemed to be convulsing. Kate didn't wait for more. She bolted down the corridor, the darkness swallowing her. She had no plan but to reach the ladder and climb out. Her footsteps pounded on the damp floor. She felt more than heard a presence chasing her, the phantom breathing echoing at her back. Each second, she feared a cold hand would clamp onto her shoulder. At last, she spotted the ladder's faint outline, leading up to the hatch. Her heart soared in desperation. She scrambled onto the rungs, nearly dropping her flashlight as she ascended. The climb felt interminable. She reached the top, slamming the hatch upward. It opened with a screech. She hauled herself up into the boiler room. The moment she cleared the hatch, she kicked it shut with a clang. She half expected to feel the weight of someone pulling from below. But the hatch stayed closed. Panting, she scuttled backward, away from that cursed sub-basement. For a few beats she lay on the cold boiler room floor, lungs burning, the building silent except for her ragged breath. Then she scrambled to her feet, shining the flashlight around. Everything looked normal, just an old abandoned utility space. No trace of the horror beneath, but she wasn't staying to find out if it would follow. She fled the basement corridor, up the stairs, racing through the dusty halls. The main door was boarded, but she squeezed through a gap she'd pried open earlier. The night air hit her like salvation. She sprinted across the overgrown lawn to her car, fumbling for her keys. Minutes later, the engine roared to life, and she sped away from Blackwood Asylum, her mind reeling with what she had witnessed. The image of those wheelchairs turning to face her, the unseen breath of long-dead patients burned in her psyche. Kate spent the next few days in a haze. She pored over her footage, her photos. Much was shaky or dark, but certain frames showed the wheelchairs clearly oriented first forward, then turning. She had audio clips capturing faint breathing. She'd never believed in ghosts, but she couldn't deny her own evidence. What had been done in that sub-basement? The undone straps and scratch-marked walls pointed to unimaginable cruelty. She tried contacting local authorities, but the building was private property, and the police saw no immediate reason to investigate old rumors. She approached local historical societies, hoping to confirm others had found that sub-basement. Most were skeptical. Some responded politely that no sub-basement existed, and that these claims are unsubstantiated. One official threatened trespassing charges if she published her trespass. Yet Kate's nightmares persisted, dreams of swirling shapes sitting in wheelchairs, exhaling in unison. She'd wake in a cold sweat, convinced she heard squeaking wheels in the hallway. She developed an aversion to the smell of old metal, which triggered flashbacks to that stifling chamber. Late one night, her phone rang from a blocked number. She answered warily. A rasping voice said, "You went down there, didn't you? I warned you. That place. It's not empty." She recognized the tipster's inflection. "You saw them, didn't you?" Kate steadied her voice. "Who are they?" "Patients, spirits." A ragged sigh. "What's left of them?" "The staff locked them in, tried new therapies. The sedatives wore off eventually. They couldn't escape, so their minds lingered. They're still there, in those chairs." The line crackled. "I'm sorry, but now that you've opened the hatch, they might find a way out." Her blood ran cold. "You're telling me I set them free?" Silence, then a whisper. "They only need someone to notice. You noticed them." Before she could press further, the line went dead. In the week that followed, odd occurrences plagued Kate. She could swear she heard gentle rolling sounds on her apartment building's floor at night. She'd enter her living room to find an office chair slightly moved. Whenever she watched her footage, an unexplained static sometimes overlaid the audio, mimicking that slow breathing. She jumped at shadows. The distant squeak of a wheelchair at a grocery store set her on edge. Sleep became elusive. She began to fear that intangible presences from the sub-basement had latched onto her. Perhaps they were searching for something, an outlet. Despite her terror, Kate poured her experiences into an article draft titled "The Deepest Basement, Uncovering Blackwood Asylum's Hidden Horrors." She described the hush of the sub-basement corridor, the wheelchairs, the scratch marks, the breathing. She included the blueprint scans, her shaky photos. If published, it would be a bombshell piece, shining a harsh light on historical abuses. But doubt gnawed at her. Would the story do more harm than good? Could it draw thrill-seekers to break into the asylum, unleashing the malignant presence further? Or was it her responsibility to expose it? She wrestled with guilt each time she reread her final lines. "I heard them breathe." One night, she sent a draft to her editor. 2 days later, he replied with confusion, claiming half the document was corrupted. Strange text replaced entire paragraphs, forming meaningless symbols. The images had turned black. She tried opening the file on her own computer and found similar corruption. It was as if the story refused to remain in the digital realm. Determined not to let her evidence vanish, Kate printed physical copies of her notes and photos, storing them in a sealed folder. But as she scanned the prints, her eyes kept drifting to an unnerving detail. In one photo taken in the sub-basement, a faint shape sat in the nearest wheelchair. It was barely discernible, like a silhouette of a person with head bowed. She hadn't noticed it before. The realization struck her. That shape wasn't in any other shot. It had only manifested in that single flash. Could it be an artifact of dust or light? Or was it truly an occupant? Late that night, she woke to the sound of slow breathing in her apartment. She bolted upright, adrenaline surging. Her bedroom door creaked open. With trembling hands, she flicked on the lamp. Nobody there. Only the hush of the night. She could no longer discount the idea that something had followed her from the sub-basement. Haunted by guilt and fear, Kate made a harrowing decision. She would return to Blackwood Asylum, seal that hatch if possible, ensure no one else stumbled into that subterranean chamber of horrors. She arrived near dusk, forced open a side window and slipped inside. The corridors felt heavier, as if the building recognized her. She descended to the basement, creeping past the same debris. At the boiler room, the hatch sat as she'd left it, closed, but not locked. She knelt, rummaging for tools to weld or bar it shut. She found an iron rod and hammered it against the hinge. An echo resounded from below, like a distant metallic clang. Her heart lurched. The hush beneath was anything but empty. Suddenly, a faint scraping arose from behind the hatch, as if chairs were shifting. She froze, paralyzed by dread. Then came that all-too-familiar breathing, magnified. It rose from the crack around the hatch's edges, a chorus of ragged lungs. The sense of an approaching crowd pressed against the underside of the hatch, as though they might push it open from below. She slammed her weight on top of it, heart pounding. The breathing intensified. She hammered at the hinge with frantic desperation, trying to bend the metal so it wouldn't open. A final shriek of metal signaled the hinge warping. She flung her entire body over the hatch, forcing it tight. The breathing reached a crescendo, countless invisible throats exhaling. Then, it subsided, receding into the gloom. She felt them withdraw, perhaps settling back into those wheelchairs, waiting. Exhausted, Kate rose, bracing the iron rod across the hatch seam. It might not hold forever, but it was something. She pinned a large chunk of debris on top. Then, trembling, she made her way back upstairs, the building's silence oppressive. Outside, dawn broke over the horizon. She felt no triumph, only an unsettling knowledge that she'd momentarily locked away a horror that defied comprehension. The sub-basement remained, its straps undone, its scratch-marked walls bearing witness to horrors past. The unseen occupants might remain there, breathing in the dark, eternally strapped between life and death. Kate never fully recovered from her encounter. She published a heavily redacted version of her article, omitting the exact location of the sub-basement to discourage thrill-seekers. Even so, rumors spread stories of a journalist who descended into Blackwood's deepest basement and came back changed. Locals whispered that the asylum's old caretaker sometimes heard echoes from below, that on certain nights the hatch rattled. Some claimed the asylum was haunted by patients who'd never left, their final memories etched into the walls. Others insisted the entire sub-basement was an urban legend. Yet the building remained vacant, an endless source of curiosity for the brave or the foolish. And if on a quiet night you stand by the boarded front doors, you might catch a faint exhalation from the depths, a heavy collective breath from the unseen. Perhaps they still wait in those wheelchairs, turned to face the door, straps undone, waiting for the next visitor to wander too far below.